What did we learn on this Victory Monday about the Denver Broncos after their historic come-from-behind performance against the New York Giants? How much did the fourth quarter heroics make up for 3 quarters of pretty bad play offensively? And does Jaxson Dart potentially have something that Bo Nix does not? All things to come on today's rundown, but we begin with a special shout-out to our friends at Denver Regenerative Medicine. Guys, if weight loss has been a struggle for you, it's time for something real. At Denver Regenerative Medicine, they use full-strength GLP-1 medications with doctor oversight. You can start today with a free consultation and get real results for under $300 a month. Book now at denverregen.com. It is a Victory Monday for the Broncos, one of several consecutive here that we have gotten to celebrate in the Mile High City. And to help us commemorate this one, as we do every Monday, let's bring in our friend of the show, NFL Insider to the Stars, James Palmer, who was in attendance for said game and was also in attendance for some pregame festivities that were very, very special in nature. And James, with how much there is to get to today, given the significance of the event with the Ring of Honor enshrinement for Demaryius Thomas, the Super Bowl 50 reunion, and then the events of the game that transpired themselves, I want to kind of make sure that I have an opportunity to touch on it all with you. So let's start there with the pregame ceremony and festivities, unveiling the pillar with Demaryius Thomas's bronze bust next to Peyton Manning's along that plaza there outside of Empower Field at Mile High. Demaryius Thomas's mother and several former players, coaches, and executives in attendance. What were the emotions of that moment and experience like? And what were some things that some of us who weren't able to be in attendance should be able to take away from it?
Yeah, it was special, Richie, honestly. Like, I'm a national reporter, but that season I felt like I was back being a beat reporter. I was with the Broncos every single week, and it was because that season was so up and down, and Peyton gets hurt. I remember being at the game where Peyton breaks the record and then gets benched in the same game, and Brock comes in and plays so well, and then Peyton comes back, and the defense carries them, and all the personalities in that room. I mean, it was really, really special to see all those guys back together. I had guys just like, tapping me on the back, and I turn around and there's CJ Anderson. He just like hugs you. They just all felt so emotional. You could tell from the weekend that was, and being there to, chop it up with D-Ware after, he was, part of the unveiling of the pillar. He told me, I said, hey, was that the first time you've seen it? And he was like, yeah. Like, when it came down, he was like, I got really emotional because that was the first time I'd seen actually the bronzing of his, of his smile and of his face. And, him and I talked a lot about experiences that they had away from the football field, going deep sea fishing and waves crashing like crazy. He's like, and DT's looking at me, and I'm like, man, if you're going to do it, do it. And he just starts puking like crazy and getting seasick and all these different stories that DT's telling. D-Ware's telling. It apparently was a great weekend. There's one thing I want to share real quick that I wasn't at, but I heard from some of the guys. They had a party or whatever at the stadium on Saturday to honor DT and honor the team. And there's 2 guys that are still playing in Vaughn and Brandon McManus, so they obviously couldn't come. Vaughn sent in, have you heard about this, Vaughn's video? Okay. Vaughn sent in a video where they kind of had him like reading. Hi, I'm Vaughn Miller, defensive, outside linebacker for the Super Bowl 50 team. I just want to say, wish you guys, I can't be there. Wish you guys, and he's just in the middle of it. I was told he just like stopped and was like, I'm not reading this crap, like, and some other choice words. And he just went off and was like, how's my boys to leave? No fly zone. He just like went completely off script about everything that he was giving a shout out to everybody back. They had a kind of a formal thing for him, and he just was like, and apparently the place went nuts because of the love for Vaughn and the way he did. But like, that was that type of team. I mean, it was really special. And I really do appreciate when we all got a chance to spend some time with Peyton. I talked to him a little bit too, was like that he made sure everybody remembered Greg Knapp, who's no longer with us too, was the quarterback coach there. And I knew Greg back in Houston, who was an outstanding person and coach. Then Ronnie Hillman's no longer with us. And Tom Heckert, like that, people that were part of that team that aren't here anymore, past just DT. I love that the team made a point to make sure that all of those people were honored as well. So it was a really great time surrounding an insane game that we'll get to. But all those other things were they were outstanding.
It just the fact that both of these remembrances, one for Demaryius and one for the 10th anniversary of the Super Bowl team, kind of colliding or coinciding on the same weekend, it really does kind of create this moment of reflection for, I think, so many fan, media, team personnel, player, whatever, here in Broncos country, because that in some ways feels like it was yesterday, but in other ways, it really does feel like, well, that was 10 years ago, and how much has transpired from the ownership saga to the revamping of the front office to the multiple attempts to find and secure a franchise quarterback and all of that. I mean, you mentioned the two active players that are still there, and everybody else has entered different phases and chapters of their lives. And it's just, it was a really cool moment to observe, certainly from my perspective, from the outside. And with the Demaryius Thomas situation, that was certainly something that I'll never forget. Kind of, it'll be one of those I'll remember where I was forever when kind of announcements and moments and the news that came out of it. And I think that for the most part, like many in Broncos country, there was some emotion to it. And I think the only thing that really started to maybe give me that little lip quiver was actually at the pillar ceremony when his bust is unveiled and his mother reaches up to touch the side of the face. In that moment, I was like, okay, I got to log off Twitter for a second.
Yeah, I was standing right there next to her. Like, I was probably within four feet of where she was at. And it was like, it was touching his face was unbelievable. And then just kind of grabbing the pillar and just holding it. And the cool part about it, honestly, if maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but I think the really, really touching part about it was everybody just gave her her moment. I mean, as long as she wanted to have it, and holding that pillar and having her head down, and I won't assume what she was doing, but I would think maybe praying or having a word for Demaryius or whatever it was. There was no rushing her. There was no like moving the ceremony along. Now it's time for pictures. Everybody there, fans, players, coaches, the media, everyone was just like, she deserves as much time with this moment as she wants. And that was a really kind of like, that was a moment. Like that was, I agree. That was a big one. And then Peyton crying. I mean, like, it's not a thing that Peyton does, it was, it's my most
memorable snippet from his retirement speech, was talking about the things he'll miss about football and putting in there, I'll miss Demaryius Thomas smiling and giving me a big hug and telling him he loves me after every touchdown pass that I threw to him. And I think that sports, for all the wonderful things that it brings, I think that there is kind of a healing or connecting power that transcends just what goes on in the stadium. And, Peyton Manning, who's a Mount Rushmore member of the NFL community and kind of a founding father in some ways of the quarterback position. And yet he has such a profound impact because of the life and the legacy of a guy like Demaryius Thomas. And even his mother sharing to the media and wanting to get a message out there about how much Broncos country's love for her son and the continued remembrance, all that, like, helps with her own grieving and healing process. It's just one of those things that kind of, it's a step back moment that's like, wow, this isn't just an average everyday football game. There's special energy and emotion around a day like this. And vibes couldn't have been higher, frankly, leading up to kickoff. And then the ball got kicked off, James, and it significantly changed. I mean, we witnessed, from an offensive perspective specifically, some of the worst football that many have seen in a good chunk of time. And that's coming off of a Jets game where we walked out of that early morning Sunday window going, that might have been some of the worst offensive football I've ever seen in X amount of time. So, James, what was the overall takeaway from you in the early portions of the game as to just why the Broncos offense doesn't seem to be able to find ground or footing in the early frames of these games?
Yeah, and well, I bet, I'm assuming we'll get to it, but I mean, they got their butts kicked in all three phases. I mean, like, it wasn't just the offense. I mean, the defense got worked, for sure. But you're right. Like, there were mental errors. There were drops. Like you're asking me to put my finger on one thing. I'm listing things because it's not one thing. It's just disjointed. It's talking to a couple of guys. I know it's a very jubilant locker room in after this game, and I went to both locker rooms. Took a pretty I think popular video of Brian Burns leaving the field. It's kind of everywhere right now. And I wanted to sift through some of that celebration in the Broncos locker room and be like, what? But honestly, let's not forget what went on for 3 quarters. And talking to some guys, some guys are quick with their answers. Mike McGlinchey was like, it's execution. It's 100% execution. We can't do it. It's 3 quarters of bleep and 1 quarter of whatever. But when I asked him, like, all right, what's happening in those 3 quarters? He's like, we're just not executing at all. We're not executing. That's the only word he's using. He wants to say more. You can tell, but he's not. When I talk to some other guys, like privately, we're having a hard time finding a rhythm. We're having a hard time getting a flow. I'm personally, a couple guys said, having a hard time finding my place in the offense. Those things are, they grab my attention a little bit. Doesn't mean they can't be fixed. Doesn't mean it's not new for some guys and their roles are new in what they're doing. But I do think the drops are an issue. I do think negative plays. Like, I'm not sure if they're good enough on offense right now to overcome negative plays. Like, I just don't know if they're good enough to do that. Like, it almost seems like everything has to be perfect to move the football right now. And I keep saying right now because I still don't think Sean is too good of a coach for things not to improve as the season goes. But when you have Ben DiNucci tweeting out like maybe Davis Webb should be calling plays mid-game.
Yeah.
Just listen. I'm assuming the exit interview did not go great with Ben, and he knows he's not coming back to the Broncos ever.
Right. So he closed the door, and
so he has the ability to go, I can tweet this because I know I'm never going back to Denver or something. That's what I would assume. But that's a guy that's been in the quarterback room. He's been here. He knows how the offense is supposed to look, and he has some questions. Again, right now it just doesn't look good enough, and it doesn't look like it has a feel to it. And that's when I talk to guys. That's what they kind of said to me. There doesn't seem to be a rhythm or a feel to how we're working as an offense.
Is that a concern that I think should be amplified? I believe that it should, because we are now entering the 2-month window. We're heading into week 8 for the Denver Broncos of the NFL season. And you mentioned there, and I don't disagree with the logic, that Sean Payton's too good of a coach for things not to get better week to week. And yet, after weeks 6 and 7, you have players in the locker room talking about a failure of execution, a lack of rhythm, an inability to find consistency on the offensive side of the ball. Sean Payton is entering post-game press conferences expressing frustration about, things we're emphasizing during the week, being better on 3rd down, taking care of the football, pre-snap management, of the offense. These are all things we're emphasizing in practice, and they're just not translating on the field. At what point, James, does the why behind some of that start to take a little bit more prevalence? And I think that is what's spurring the Ben DiNucci's of the world, or the Jeff Schwartz, or these other pundits who are like, how can a team like the Broncos on offense specifically, because we'll get to the other side of the ball, be practicing every single week and then the product looks the way that it does?
I don't think they're alone in it. I really don't. I mean, like, look at Philadelphia. I know I bring them up sometimes, but they're kind of like the one of those few franchises everybody in the league looks at all the time.
Sure.
All of a sudden, big vertical game, passing downfield. We fixed all of our problems. I mean, they've had a number of problems offensively, and let's just say it. Let's compare the skill players of the Eagles to the Broncos. Like, which one most likely you would say has more talent to it? You'd say Philadelphia with Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley, and they've been having tons of trouble moving the football. Now, I would say everybody goes, okay, they fixed it. Like, now they're back, now they're running. Can that happen with the Broncos? I think so. I think there's a difficult balance, and it's kind of fitting that Gary Kubiak was here, and it was great to see Kubes, and that he's, he's one of the ones that also gets to, drop the what is that thing called? A sheet, I guess, curtain, whatever it is, over a cloth over, because a lot of coaches are stubborn in what they coach and what they do. They know it inside and out. They know it better than all of us. And they also see things that we don't see. Gary was a very stubborn coach. And if you remember when Peyton and Gary first started working together, it wasn't smooth sailing. It really wasn't. And so he was like, well, no, this will work. We just got to fight through it.
Putting Peyton Manning under center. And
Peyton hit it. I remember Peyton got really mad at me when I asked that question one time. I was like, hey, how different do you see the defense now that you're forced in Gary's system to be under center than in the gun where you've been able to read everything so much? And you could tell it, like, not that the question irked him, that being under center was kind of
situation.
The situation. Because I can't see. And so they fought through that. And maybe that is what's happening with Sean too. These guys do know it better than we do. I do think we should always remember that. They're seeing things in practice, right, Richie, where it's like, no, this is on its way. This is maybe going to get there. Man, we have to stick with it. They have to learn it. They have to feel comfortable. We'll get there. It's a fine line between going, and that's why these coaches are under a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny and get paid a lot of money to be a good head coach. To go, no, to find that moment when, no, it's not working, I got to pivot and change some of what I do, or I can't pivot too early. I need to stick with what I'm teaching. I can't show the team that I'm giving up on what I've preached now for the entire offseason and the entire time here that we're going to do it this way. I need to stick with it. It's a delicate balance. Denver has the ability to get out of this, I think, but right now it doesn't have what the players are describing it as.
The three phases that you mentioned, James, there were some struggles, I think, in all aspects. I mean, RJ Harvey stepping out of bounds on a kickoff return that put an offense that already struggles to find a rhythm and get out of its own way and produce longer sustained drives. Now you're pinning them deeper back into their own territory because of a mental error and a mistake. But on the defensive side of the ball, James, and this was, I think, really the engine of the hype train, especially from a social media perspective, behind this matchup was comments from Jonathan Cooper that the New York Giants fan base took and ran with. And then you have responses from Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter and Brian Burns. Nick Benito tweeting and deleting. And, John Franklin Myers is never afraid to get into the mix of all of it. Jaxson Dart is being asked about it at the podium. But James, for 3 quarters and change of this game, this Giants offense was in pretty firm command and control of the football game against one of, especially from a statistical perspective, which numbers sometimes lie, but from a statistical perspective, this Broncos defense is one of the best in the league, certainly at getting after the quarterback, creating pressures, sacks, etc. And their coverage on the back end with the star power that they have there speaks for itself. So what did Jaxson Dart, Cam Scatterbo and company do to the Denver Broncos defense that allowed them to have such success? And is it something that we now need to be on the lookout going forward with a high-powered offense in Dallas coming to town next weekend and the remainder of the season kind of unfolding ahead of them?
Man, that Dallas offense is moving it right now. Think about that. Javonte Williams, second in the NFL in rushing. Dak's playing like the MVP of the league. You got 2 number 1s in Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson is tied for the NFL lead in touchdown catches at the tight end spot. I mean, you got a lot on your hands and a lot you got to fix this week, I think, because it's not only that the Giants move the football. I had a defensive coordinator text me about an hour ago. Hey, I watched the game this morning. Jaxson Dart was hooping. And I don't blame him. Like that he watched the film. That's a DC in this league. It was like Jaxson Dart's playing. And I asked him, what's happening? He's like, they are designing it all to his strengths, and it is his offense. And I've talked to some guys there, and that's like a "We Want You" type of movie. Poster,
yeah. Well,
we're on to something here.
You're walking down the path that I was trying to open the door to. Yep.
And it's all designed towards all of these strengths that he has, and he understands it, and the rest of the team understands it. It's not like they just moved the ball. Guys were wide open. I mean, there were full breakdowns. Now, you could say how much of that was the Giants' scheme on that. How much was that an actual breakdown by the Broncos? A couple of those were breakdowns defensively.
Yeah, the first touchdown for sure to the tight end was
it's a breakdown. There's still some bounce. The Theo Johnson touchdown. It's also by oftentimes that play, Brandon Stokely will tell you, is off of a strange throw.
Yes.
And it's maybe not it was actually a very good throw. It hit him in the chest.
Yeah, Stokely's throw was not a good throw.
Not a good throw.
That one was.
This was a good throw, but that's when I was talking to Zach Allen after the game, and Zach's like, that after that play we're kind of like, it might not be our day. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
just
especially because I remember thinking in that moment, James, that the Broncos get the tipped deflection touchdown to Troy Franklin there, which is just one of those, like, Devon Vele had one of those last season in the final week against the Chiefs where it's like everything's going to go the Broncos' way today. Devon Vele just caught that ball. Well, this was like, hey, they have things haven't been going their way. This is the kind of thing that starts a snowball. And then the Giants said, hold my beer. Anything you do today, we can do better. And they get a deflected pass touchdown for 10 times the amount of yards with a higher degree of difficulty. And it just erases all of that good karma.
Yeah. I think tight ends have consistently been a bit of an issue and this was a tight end driven game plan for the Giants. That was easy. They had no receivers really. So it was like, it was like, we got to go to our tight ends. I think they did I think they're playing better up front than probably people give them credit for as an offensive line. I think they've, I talked to Theo Johnson about this last week when he was on my show on The Athletic. And he was just like, we have an identity now as an offense, like certainly. And it's led by our quarterback and our running back is that we're going to hit you. I mean, look, Cam Scadaboo hit Riley Moss after scoring a touchdown 2 yards into the end zone and just leveled him. Do you remember that play? Like, that's how they play football. And it's really through easy I don't want to say easy reads, but Jackson's doing more at the line of scrimmage than people think. His mobility is a big part of it. I'm curious why we didn't see more of Bo using that outside of the fourth quarter. Because I think it's a really great strength of his. He's an athlete. Like some quarterbacks are quarterbacks. He's an athlete. Like, certainly an athlete, and I would lean more into that. But I don't think like Denver laid a bit of an egg defensively, I would say. But I think this kid's on a heater. I think that plays a part of it. And I would say they actually played well offensively the entire game. I mean, they scored. They gave up a 2-minute. Now that 2-minute was a little bit wild. I don't think that's PI in the end zone, just my opinion.
No, and you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because you're somebody, and the shoulders you bump up against are significantly more important than the shoulders I typically do. So I need to relay a message to you. Yeah. I very seldom, if ever, will take the microphone and say that I speak for all of Broncos country, but I feel confident in saying this. That specific scenario that we saw unfold, will Dart uncorks one in a desperate gotta-have-it situation to a ball that was deep down the sideline and whether Dart was trying to do it intentionally there or not, we certainly see quarterbacks in the NFL intentionally try to throw these lollipop balls to allow the receiver to come back to the football, draw a defensive pass interference penalty with a spot foul and all that. We have to find a way to get rid of that. I just think that it puts the officials in a position where they can't do what we all want them to do, which is swallow a whistle, and you get into the letter of the law. But Riley Moss turned his head around to play the football. He was in good position, but given the way that the ball is thrown and the fact that there's another human being that you can't control their actions involved in the scenario, it just is a thing that I think football needs to move on from.
You probably like basketball, right? Like I wasn't the greatest basketball player in high school. I was like our defensive guy. And I took a lot of charges. And I try to get under the skin of a lot of guys on the other team because, man, we were getting whooped by some really, really good players in Philadelphia, like Jameer Nelson or Rip Hamilton or whoever it was that we were playing against. And I was really big on, if I beat you to the spot of this court, it's my spot. I'm already there. And if you run into me, I beat you there. It's not a block. It's a charge. Riley Moss is entitled to that piece of the field. He's standing there. And when he turns around, because that's a big part of this, and he turns around, now once he's looking at the football, he has every right to be there. He's already there. So that's not a foul when you already are occupying that piece of the field. When the ball is underthrown, whether it's intentional or not, I'm not sure if Jaxson did it intentionally. I think he was just like, hey, I hope something happens. Yeah. Is kind of what it looked because of the way the play developed. But he's entitled to being there. And if he tries to go through you, that's not your fault. You're standing where you've solidified that position prior to the ball getting there. And so I do think it was an issue. It's funny. There were players that wanted to speak very freely about that call in the locker room that bit their tongue because they know they can't say anything. Yeah. Like they know they can't, and you can't criticize the officials. But But what I would say is when I asked a lot of them, how'd you feel about Sean running onto the field? I didn't have a single guy tell me he didn't like it.
Yeah.
That
was an
appreciate him
element.
having our back, man, because that was insane. Now, part of me was like, oh no, he's going to screw the team. It moved it from the 2 to the 1.
Right. Yeah.
So it could have been disastrous, I guess, but
it's funny
because
because
have a problem with it.
When I saw that unfold in real time, I said, wow, that's not really like Sean Payton at all. He's got it in him to be fiery and to shoot back, but it's usually from the high ground. He's up at the podium. It's in a controlled setting. This was like an emotionally reactive, temperamental Sean. He's going all the way down to basically the 5-yard line and chirping at the officials. It's just not something we normally see from him. And I jumped on our post-game live digital show with Cecil Lammy, and he asked me, he put his tinfoil hat on and asked me if there was a conspiracy theory that Sean did it on purpose to move the ball closer because it would conserve time for the offense, because you figure if they can score from the 1,
4D chess right there.
Yeah. So I said no, because I think Sean's a proud man and a proud coach, and I don't think he just wants to give anything. He could have told Vance Joseph to just stand up and let him walk in, and he didn't do that. But what I do think is that, and we've seen this here in town locally with the former Nuggets head coach Michael Malone. He used to be famous for the rage timeout or the get off the bench and get after the officials in a very specific game situation to get himself tossed to kind of galvanize and rally the troops. I think the Broncos were in the midst of really having a chance to complete an epic comeback here, and a call like that has the potential to just deflate the balloons or take all the wind out of that sails. And I think Sean potentially could have seen that as an opportunity to be like, no, we're still in this. We got it. And if I'm showing the fire, then you guys need to also.
I think that's exactly right. And I think the player involved is very specific to this as well. Riley Moss has played better than the perception of Riley Moss. And he can't do anything about the perception of his play. He can't do anything about the best corner of the last decade is playing opposite of him.
Right.
Like, he can't do anything about those things. He's going to get picked on because teams aren't idiots. You don't throw at Patrick Surtain a lot. You're going to throw at Riley Moss. But the perception and the things that are happening around Riley over the last several weeks, I think he does a very good job of blocking it out as a player. I think he does a good job of having a goldfish memory and moving on quickly. But this was also a moment for Sean to be like, I have my defenses back and I have my players back for sure. And that might carry more weight than just, what guys said in the locker room Sunday. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't like broken down by somebody else on the team going, look at our coach out here just screaming. And I mean, you should have seen him in the locker room post-game. He's doing the Sean Payton strut. That he has a very different way. He has a very specific way of walking that it's Sean. Even when you're looking from the press box now, you're like, there's Sean. How it was. And you boys better be telling me this story about this game when I'm in the nursing home. Jonathan Franklin Myers, I want you to visit me when I'm in the nursing home and come talk to me about that 33 points in the fourth quarter. And he's just like, these things, the reason I brought that up are why guys like playing for Sean.
Yes.
It's how he connects with players. It's being a guy that can rib the other team. I mean, he takes a little shot at Russell Wilson on the podium. Russ didn't even play.
Nobody catches more strays from former teams than Russell Wilson, man. That guy is just a punching bag.
He has this way, and you saw the way his players were. Do you think he disliked the way guys were chirping during the week? I assume the PR staff didn't like it in Denver, but I don't think Sean probably had a problem with it. But you kind of carry yourself that way if that's the way you want to. Sean carries himself that way. And so I do think that play was, I mean, we may be looking at that in a couple of weeks, that it gave this team a little, I mean, my defense is not playing the way they usually play. Like, we're going to get hosed. I'm going to stick up for my player. I mean, that I think moves the meter. I really do.
Well, you touched on Jaxson Dart and Bo Nix and kind of the way that it was a tale of 3 quarters and 1 quarter and all that. And looking at those 2 players specifically, and that's kind of what I was pointing at when you were talking was, I asked a question on social media at halftime of that game, given the way that it was trending, and it continued to for another, 15, 17 minutes or so. What does Jaxson Dart have around him that Bo Nix does not? when you're looking at the two quarterbacks in their comparable situations, Jaxson Dart's got Cam Scatterbo kind of reinvigorating a run game there, and Tyrone Tracy certainly contributing as well. Well, Bo Nix has J.K. Dobbins, who's a top 5 rushing attack in the NFL, and R.J. Harvey is a supplementary piece and all that. You look at the two sets of receivers and tight ends for the New York Giants and the Broncos. Maybe not like world beater position groups on either side, but not one that I think you could say from the Giants' perspective is just overwhelmingly better than what they have in Denver. An offensive line that's bookended with some talent, especially at the tackle position. I think Jaxson Dart has that with Andrew Thomas. And then, Garrett Bowles is playing some of the better football of his career here in Denver. And then
pass catcher Garrett Bowles.
Yes, almost.
That should have been a touchdown. I don't know why Bo hitched. It was open right away. And you just got to lob it back there. He's the only one back there. And he hitches and then throws it on a line. I wanted Garrett to get that.
So did I.
He was wide open. All right, keep going.
Yeah. So you flip it to the other side of the ball, and both teams, especially in their defensive fronts, are loaded with high-profile talent and prolific players that can get after the quarterback and hold their own in coverage. So when I asked myself that question and then I put it out there on social media, I couldn't really come up with a good answer other than, I guess you could argue, and you kind of did, that Jaxson Dart certainly has a coaching staff who is adamant about putting Jaxson Dart in an offense in a situation that maximizes his skill set and increases the significant odds at his comfortability as he begins his first month or so as an NFL starter. And maybe you could argue that hasn't manifested itself for Bo Nix in 2025. Outside of the fourth quarter of this game, against the Giants, the previous 7 quarters were pretty rough. And so, James, is there something to be said about the way that Sean Payton is orchestrating this offense for Bo Nix? And you can look at a chicken or an egg situation, because to get some of the more quote unquote, if you're looking at it from the outside in, vanilla style of play, where it's a lot of wide receiver screens, a lot of check downs, a lot of, basic rudimentary kind of offenses, to the point where the Giants are calling out screen before the play. But then it turns on in the fourth quarter because they go up tempo and is maybe simpler. Is the origin of that, in your opinion, closer to Sean Payton is calling an offense that is that way because he has uncertainty or apprehension that his quarterback can execute the offense that he wants to run consistently week in and week out? Or is it just a stylistic choice from a coaching perspective of keeping cards close to the vest until we've got a few hands left to play, and then we turn them loose late in the games, which is how the Broncos offense has seemed to go at many points throughout this season?
A lot there. There's a few things. I think Jaxson Dart's playing very similar to Bo Nix in his rookie year. Like, not there, make some plays with your legs, make sure you're doing I'm seeing Bo not have a hesitation, but it doesn't look like he's looking to use his legs when things aren't there as much as he did in his rookie year. And he's an outstanding athlete, like a great athlete. I look at Kansas City, and before things have been clicking these last couple of weeks, Patrick Mahomes was their leading rusher. Why? Because when he didn't really see it and it was disjointed and the timing was off, he made sure they got yards, and that's what he was doing. And I think Jaxson Dart's kind of doing that. I think some of the stuff is very simple to what I'm told. For Jaxson, if it's not there, he's taken off. I don't know if the way he's playing is sustainable. It's not. I don't think it's sustainable. I think a lot of people around the league do not think it's sustainable to stay healthy. I do think there's, in year 2, stuff you're trying to add with Bo in this offense, and that's part of the process. Right now, it's just very. Look, there's no book on Jaxson Dart. There's no book on how he runs this. I don't want to say it's easier, but it's a little bit different executing when a team the NFL doesn't have an entire offseason to go over what you'd like to do in your tendencies and stuff. He doesn't have a ton of them yet on paper. I don't want to take anything away from Jaxson the way he's playing. I think the coaching staff has done a very good job setting him up to succeed and making things really easy for him to see. But you do have to take those, Richie, to the next level. And I think that's what Sean is trying to do with Bo in this season. I just feel like there's a sense to this offense to where if it's not schemed up for guys to get open, very few plays are made, and I don't like that. But what I'm seeing is Sean does scheme guys open outside of the fourth quarter. They're there, right? Yeah. There's plays to be made.
I've been adamant that Sean Payton's play calling, which has become kind of a boogeyman here in town in terms of a catch-all. Let's blame it on Sean Payton's play calling. I think that has been unfairly criticized in some moments. There have been times where, like, to be honest with you, you mentioned the play earlier. I think that when you're a team that has gone out and signed J.K. Dobbins, you signed Evan Ingram to be your joker, even though Nate Atkins looks more like the joker most of the time with the way they deploy him. You draft R.J. Harvey, you draft Pat Bryant, you pay Cortland Sutton. You've got all these weapons. Why then is there this inherent temptation or desire to draw up a pop pass to Garrett Bowles as a tackle eligible when you've got playmakers that can do it? So I think Sean Payton's play calling...
Are they, though?
Well, that's the fair rebuttal. That Sean didn't think so in that moment, because I don't think Sean Payton, as good of a coach or as well-seasoned and veteran of a coach that he is, would go out of his way to not put the ball in a playmaker's hands that he felt was capable. I said that against the Eagles when J.K. Dobbins helps the Broncos in the run game march all the way down the field. They get to the 2 or 3 yard line. They take J.K. Dobbins out. They put R.J. Harvey in for a toss play that loses 2 yards when the guy that the girl you ran with, the girl you brought there to the dance was standing right there. Okay. And you took him out. So I think Sean Payton's play calling has had moments here and there, but I agree with you. I think that it goes often unrecognized that from a schematic perspective, Sean Payton is creating playmaking opportunities that leads to the execution that Mike McGlinchey and others have mentioned.
Yeah. How many, just off the top of your head, take a rough guess. How many explosive, probably, I'd say, deep touchdown balls we've seen there and they've been missed this season?
Well, I mean, you had 3 in the Chargers game alone.
100%.
So yeah, 7. I think
he had another. Yeah, I think he had another one in the Colts game for sure. Yeah. Like guys behind defenses, schemed well, and just not connecting. So to me, with that is he can scheme people open for sure. That's what he was best at, even in his time in New Orleans. And I just think right now the way this offense is playing, they can't overcome negative plays. They can't overcome sluggish first and second downs. I know we talk about third and long a lot. I'm watching Drake May complete third and long repeatedly right now.
He's balling.
I mean, he's playing his tail off. It doesn't seem to phase that offense that I don't think is overly talented either. Like, I think Diggs is a pretty good player. I think Portland's a pretty good player. Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Pop Douglas, Ramondre Stevenson, they're finding ways to make some plays. I think your players need to go make plays. And I think Marvin Mims went and did that in this game a little bit. It is something that I think everybody's kind of trying to figure out about what's going on. And I'm coming back to the idea of this. Maybe the and we'll see. There's still a lot of season left. But maybe right now the feeling is that because the expectations were extremely high for the offense and the quarterback. And I think that might make it feel a little worse than it is, actually. I'm not saying it's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm not giving it an excuse as an offensive system right now in the way it's working and executing. But maybe because of everything we heard and saw, actually really heard. I mean, did you think this was a great training camp for the offense?
No. I did not. I didn't either. It took about a week and a half for there to come a day where you could at least argue that the offense held their own against the defense and won the day. Yeah,
totally agree. And so maybe I feel like a little bit of just the expectations were almost too high, and that might play a little part in the frustration right now because it was like we were told one thing that it's going to be.
Well, the fourth quarter comes, James, in that game. And really, it just flipped the entire game script upside down. Bo Nix becomes the first quarterback in NFL history to have 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns in a quarter. You had 3 lead changes in the final 2 minutes of the game. Teams that were trailing by 18 points in the final 6 minutes of the game Since the 1970 merger, we're 3,676. They are now 3,677. The Broncos in 2025 and the Colts in 2003 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bo Nix, James, might be able to play 170 more games from this time on out, and he will likely never have a quarter like he had on Sunday at Empower Field at Mile High. If you were just to isolate Bo Nix's fourth quarter against some of his better passing performances of the year, it clears by almost every metric. He had the highest completion percentage when you isolate it to, just that specific quarter compared to the other games, almost matching single game yardage totals from his previous best outings. And in terms of total touchdowns, clearing the number for the season high, even more than the Bengals game where you went up against a team that was reeling without Joe Burrow. James, Bo Nix's performance drew two significant comparisons to two wildly popular for wildly different reasons quarterbacks. Tim Tebow with Tebow Mania and Tebow Magic, and John Elway. The argument being John Elway dragged some pretty bad Broncos teams and willed them to fourth quarter comebacks and victories earlier in his career before he had the reinforcements that helped them win back-to-back Super Bowls. And Tebow Mania, Tebow Magic, the nationwide phenomenon of essentially games unfolding the way they did on Sunday, where you have 3+ quarters of abysmal, unproductive, uninspiring offensive football, and then all of a sudden the lights come on and the Broncos start converting in ways that they hadn't even dreamed of prior to that within a game. So, James, was Bo Nix's performance, in your eyes, closer to Tebow or closer to John Elway?
Oh, man. It is closer to Tebow. It's not. John Elway is one of the greatest players to ever play this game.
I agree.
We can't start saying Bo Nix is John Elway-esque. Come on. That is a unicorn type player. And listen, there was another one that played it like Brett Favre played that way. Brett Favre throw three picks in the first three quarters and then throw 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And it's like, well, he played like that because he put his team in a hole by playing bad. I do think Tim had, obviously he had a lot of moxie. He had a lot of just, he was a winner for sure.
He's a gamer.
He was a gamer, guys. He was a winner. He was one of the greatest college players of all time. It just didn't translate. I would say there was Tebow-esque to it, right? Like the Marvin Mims completion, the ball's not going to him. He's running to clear out the space, and the post is happening underneath him, and he turns and he just catches the ball.
I'm so glad you said that, because when I watched it live, I'm like, I don't think that pass was intended for Marvin.
You can see the way Marvin's running. He's trying to take defenders with him.
Yeah.
To clear out the under, so you can run underneath Marvin, and then you can catch and maybe get some yards after the catch of that. It's missed, and Marvin just turns around and he hits him in the stomach, and whoa. Kudos to Marvin, but I don't think he's the intended receiver on that play. That's a little Tebow-esque there. Throwing the ball, Justin Chenard I was talking to him at his locker, and he's like, I don't know why they were throwing. I thought he was going to run to me. The clock's on their side. What was there, 3:40 or 3:50 left, and Broncos Broncos had one timeout. It's 3rd and 5. He was just I thought he'd just run. What? And he throws the pick. There were some things that were just kind of gifted to them. My video with Brian Burns, the reason he was losing his mind is he's like, why are we dropping 8?
Yeah.
The Broncos essentially did this the Giants did this for the Broncos. Our best asset as an organization is our defensive line. Yeah. So when the game's on the line, we're just going to take them out of the equation.
Yeah, they had plays where Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter in the final minutes of the game are on the sideline.
They're not on the field.
Yeah.
You're rushing 3, and you're Javon Highland's already gone down. Another corner's gone down. Your secondary already had a lot of questions, but let's put the game on them. Fascinating. And so Daboll says he's not making any changes to his staff. I know there was a lot of angry people in that locker room. I was in the Giants locker room.
Yeah.
And some people were upset the way it played out. But those are all things that, listen, you got to win the game. But I want to say those things helped Denver for sure. If there's no pick from from Jaxson Dart. There's no
Right.
game. But Bo still had to make the plays. I will say that. He still had to make the plays. And I love when he's moving. Like, get him using his legs again a little bit more. He's a great athlete. He plays the position more like an athlete, honestly. And when he's in that mindset, it seems like he plays well.
So when we're talking about then, James, the concept of unlocking the Broncos offense and getting them to a point where we don't just see the offensive efficiency and the conversions come through in the final frame of a game or in the back half, the waning minutes of the final frame of the game, the way they did against the Giants. Why isn't that happening, you think, for the Broncos in terms of these slower starts? Like I think that they're all self-aware and smart enough in that building to realize, hey, look at all these good things that we did and what took place. And how do we make those more frequent and replicate those earlier in the game? So why do you think it's not happening? And what are some tweaks that you would make if you were putting a headset on to say, hey, let's prevent this from happening week in and week out when we're fighting for our lives for 3.5 quarters?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm putting the headset on. Those guys have forgotten more about football than,
messed up the hair.
I know. Yeah, that's a good point too. But like, I do think they're working at it, certainly. And I do think there's still a lot to figure out. It was almost like in this game, it was like, how many times were you and I talking going, it looks like Troy Franklin might be solidifying that number 2. You watch this game and you're like, might have to go back to Marvin Mims. Like, I don't know what they are as an offense a little bit. I think that needs to be figured out. I think the run game was there and then it was gone. And then it's, I think there's a lot that it looks like, I don't know. I really don't. Like, and I don't think anybody does right now who's looking at this offense. But I do think there's aspects of it that I think they know they can hopefully try to lean on, but I don't know if they know entirely what all those are right now. I really don't. Like, what's the staple of this offense?
It should be running the football and building off of the play action and using more
the boots and stuff like that,
bootlegs to get Bo on the move and utilize that athleticism, because he seems to be at his most comfortable and I think favoring making throws on the run and getting outside of the stationary pocket to try to make something happen.
Yep. I totally agree. He plays the position very athletically, and I think he likes the movement idea of it. I think there was if you watch the game, and I always love to watch Bo come off the field after sadly multiple 3-and-outs this past game, but when he's leaving the field and then that initial conversation between him and Sean that happens, and it's you can tell it's what did you see? What did you see? I didn't see this. And then sometimes there's a little bit of a secondary process to it. Sometimes there isn't. And I don't know that shows me that we're constantly trying to figure out, Sean is figuring out what Bo is seeing and how do I work with what Bo is seeing. I think that's part of it.
Last one for me here, James, the post-game reactions from the players in the Broncos locker room specifically. You had Garrett Bowles telling Broncos country not to leave early again, kind of slapping him on the wrist because but his reasoning was kind of the more evident thing. This team is special, that we're capable of anything. You had Patrick Surtain talking about how he just said it. I lost hope. I lost faith that we were going to be able to come back and win that game. And he certainly wasn't alone in that respect. And you had Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper doing a joint presser together, right? Where it just felt like you can tell how in sync those guys are, how fond of each other they are. And even in a smaller moment, Jaxson Dart being interviewed after the game, talking about now that Dre Greenlaw's coming back and that likely potentially relegating him back to a reserve duty when you have Singleton and Greenlaw healthy, and how he's kind of handling that and the maturity of that response. A win like the Broncos experienced on Sunday with the heroic, historic, probably won't see it again for a significant length of time, nature to it, has the potential, I think, to galvanize and bring a locker room and a group of players and coaches together from a belief standpoint that says, hey, we really can do anything. We really are never out of it. I mean, that was the hallmark of the Tebow Mania kind of phenomenon. But it also has, and Sean Payton cautioned against it, the potential to maybe diminish or move past some of the frustrations and the issues that need correcting that led them to that point. So, James, do the Broncos, with a coming off of a game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium where they struggled offensively,
Mhm.
going into this game where they struggled offensively for basically 50 minutes of a football game, and now heading into a game against the Cowboys where offense is going to have to pull weight again against the Dallas Cowboys offense that's one of the best in the league. How much concern do you think that there is or should be that this Broncos result coming back in historic fashion is going to prevent them from giving the proper addressing to the problems that led them to that point?
Oh no, they'll be addressed. They know how bad they played for 3 quarters. I don't think this is one of those instances where you do learn something about your team late in games. I mean, yeah, Bo was saying I was sitting on the bench thinking about how I was going to answer questions about getting shut out in this game. Like he was thinking about that during the game. And so I do think you learn something about your team late in the game. Put that over there. Awesome. Great. Resilient. Can make plays in crunch time. Our quarterback made plays in crunch time. Special teams made a kick. Like we operated without timeouts. How do we do all these things well at the end of the game? Great. Put that over there. Guys, the rest of the game was crap. Like we know it. Players know it. The locker room knows it. Each position coach is giving a grade, remember. Pretty much this happens around the league. You grade all your players' performances in the positions, and the position coaches do it. I don't think those grades are outstanding given the ending of the game or not. And so I do think they do. There was enough of a sample size, Richie, over the 3 quarters of like, we're not playing very well here.
Yeah.
Whether it's, blown assignments defensively or, the way the offense couldn't move the football. I think they're well aware. It's one of those things where it's like, are you one of those teams that can figure things out while you're winning? That's a luxury in this league. Everybody's trying to get better after this first quarter part of the season. Some really good teams figure themselves out and are comfortable with where the record is oftentimes in that first month because they do figure it out. And if you're figuring out while you're winning is a bonus for sure. And they're lucky that they had this one. I mean, they really are. It's an awesome game. One of the coolest finishes I've ever been a part of. And covering a game, but I do think they know the issues that they have. They know there's issues offensively. I know texting with some people in Dallas about what's going on in this next game coming up. This might be a get right game for Broncos offense. That defense in Dallas is not playing great right now. This could be an opportunity where you have a team that can't really get after the quarterback, has a difficult time in coverage, doesn't play a lot of zone, plays a lot, Yeah, so we'll see. I think this could be the type of defense that maybe could help you, but you might have to keep up with Dak because he's playing lights out right now. He really is.
That is going to be the task for the Broncos. Obviously, basking, I think, today, certainly last night and into today, in the glory, the historic nature, especially with the magnitude of the weekend, with the emotions that were tied to it, with the result that they got, 33-point. Unbelievable box score to go 0-0-0-33 to win a game in walk-off fashion after getting walked off twice in the first 3 weeks of the season. And now the page will turn as we enter basically the halfway point of the NFL season with the Broncos in sole possession of first place in the AFC West. Something that even if we thought things were going, pretty well and taking steps to build upon last year, we may not have seen it unfolding with that specific frame in the standings. James, thank you so much for joining us like you do every single Monday. We will catch you again next time.
Sounds good, buddy.
Appreciate it. To the rest of you out there, have a wonderful rest of your Victory Monday afternoon. We'll catch you tomorrow at noon for the next rundown.